Never heard of the Millennium Falcon? Should I have? It's a ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Kessel Run Weekly. Thank you so much for being here today and being our avid listeners. We have a very exciting episode for you. As you can tell, I'm not alone. I'm your host, Cheyenne, and I'm joined by co-host Grace, but also our special guest, Sariah Wilson. Say hi, Grace.
Hello.
Say hi, Sariah.
Hey, everyone.
I'm very excited for you guys and for us because Sariah has written this really awesome book that we're going to talk about today. But we do have some very important questions for you before we get started, Sariah, so our listeners can get to know you. When and how did you get into Star Wars?
This is one of those things, there is no answer because my dad was obsessed. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up with this. And I remember going to see Return of the Jedi in theaters when I was 8 years old. It's like one of my first movie memories. And I don't remember there ever being a time when I didn't know Darth Vader was Luke's father. You know, mm-hmm. That just was knowledge. I was never shocked by it. So yeah, I grew up with that. The story I always tell is a couple years ago, I stopped by my dad's house and, Empire Strikes Back was on TBS. And I'm like, why are you watching this? You have this in 5 different formats. You don't need to be watching it on cable. And he's like, yeah, it's on. He just loves it that much. He made up his own song to the Star Wars theme that I now sing in my head whenever it's on. But he loved it, and he bought all the Extended Universe books, and I grew up reading those. And mm-hmm. so, that's why when I watched, the sequels, I was convinced they were going to make Kylo Ren and Rey brother and sister. I'm like, they're Jason and Jamie. That's going to happen,
Yeah.
That. So I was convinced they were going to be the twins, and that's why he had this connection to Han, and so I was just kind of waiting for that. Mm-hmm. But I was so glad when they weren't. Yeah, so I've just always been a Star Wars fan. It's always been part of my life, and just continues to be even now.
That's awesome. Same here. Mine was also from my dad. He just kind of sat me in front of a TV one day when it was on, and I was like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
And now I'm stuck with it forever.
So
same.
What? My mom.
Yeah. And yeah, now my mom is just committed to it as well. I kind of dragged her into coming to conventions with me. And now she's like, oh, should I do this cosplay? And I'm like, yeah, Mom, do whatever you want. So you might have kind of already answered this in that answer, but how does Star Wars keep you coming back? Are there new things or interesting things, or like you said, it's just a part of your life?
Yeah, they'll put Star Wars on it and I'm going to go watch it. I'll be mad, I'll get angry about stuff, and
mm-hmm.
I'll complain about it, but you put Star Wars on it and I am going to watch it. And absolutely. Even like The Mandalorian, it is really, I've got some kids who are super into it, and a couple kids are like, Star
mm-hmm.
Wars. But we are all, we're sitting on the couch together on Fridays to watch The Mandalorian together. It's just kind of brought the whole family together. And so, yeah, you put Star Wars on it, I'm going to go consume it. I'm going to be part of it, and I'll pick and choose the stuff that I do and don't like, but
mm-hmm.
I'll love it.
Yeah, at the end of the day. Me too.
Yeah.
I feel that. All right, so we have a couple of sillier questions for you. This is more of your favorites. So, who is your favorite character from each trilogy, if you have
Okay. This is so hard. You told me you're going to ask me this question, and I've literally been thinking about it for days.
Yeah.
Okay, sequel trilogy is easy.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Solo.
Yes.
Rey's a close second, but Ben Solo is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
The prequels, I'm going to have to go with Obi-Wan. I really love Qui-Gon Jinn, but I'm I love Obi-Wan throughout the whole arc, so I thought he's probably my favorite. But you get me back to the originals, and I'm I don't even know who to pick. I love everybody. So I was going back and forth, and I'm if you force me, you have to pick one. Probably Princess Leia.
Okay.
But, I would be equal with everyone. I could make a case for any of them. I love all of them that much. So, yeah, that's a hard question.
It is. Whenever I wrote it, because sometimes I, swap out questions for this, Star Wars-based interview, and I was thinking about it, too, and I was like, I don't know if I could pick. For me...
Sorry.
It's okay.
I dropped my phone off.
That's okay. I literally just turned my computer off because I got an email.
Right now.
It's okay. For me, it was super easy for a sequel trilogy as well. Ben Solo was also my favorite from the sequel trilogy. But for the other two, I was I don't know. The prequels, I really loved. I know who
the
your favorite
sequels
prequel
was
is.
the hardest for me. Because, like, the original trilogy, Leia's my favorite. For the prequels, as our Castle Run Weekly listeners know, Padme is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But with the sequels, it's like, I love so much about these characters. Like, I love Finn for his determination. I love Rey for the way that she just doesn't give up in situations. I love Poe because his whole character is just, I love his character. Or like I love all of them. But honestly, probably with the sequels, I would have to go with Poe. Just because, like, I relate to him the most, to be completely honest. Like,
I wouldn't have known that.
I'm able to connect with. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We're both chaotic, so I feel that.
That's fair. Okay, Sariah, so if you had to pick your favorite movie, I know that this is also not an easy question, and it probably changes. Mine changes all the time. But right now, what's your favorite movie?
In this moment, Last Jedi.
Yeah? Awesome.
Yeah.
I do love that one. It's good. What's your favorite thing about
It's a
it?
good
Do
one.
you have, if you have one?
It's the Rey and Ben enemies to lovers romance.
Yes.
I am a romance writer. I want romance in my Star Wars, you know, and but like George Lucas got that, you know, that's why we see it in the prequels, in the originals, and I'm like, yay, it came back, you know, and to see people fighting it, and like, it's kind of like you're a weird person if you like Raylo. I'm like, but they wrote that. It's all there. It's a big romance. It's my favorite, so that's probably why I picked that one.
Yeah.
And
you
it's
can
just
feel
brilliant
it.
writing and beautiful cinematography, and
It is
The cinematography,
gorgeous.
just chef's kiss.
Yeah.
So good.
It is gorgeous.
The
I think
throne
about that
room
all the time.
scene where they're fighting all the guards,
Yeah.
like, yes, please. That's
Mhm.
so amazing.
Every time.
I love
it's
that scene
awesome.
so much.
I really
Right.
love the Holdo maneuver. I know that it wasn't like always received well, and I thought it was really funny when movie theaters started having to put the signs up like, hey, this movie is quiet for like 0.2 seconds. It's not broken, it's fine. That was really funny to me, but it is
Are you serious?
so cool, the sound effects, and like I, as a like baby writer, I'm thinking about the story that I want to tell, and I'm like, I gotta also start like getting my brain ready for all the things that I can add to it, because something like that is amazing.
well, and they tried to retcon it in the last movie, but I'm like, this was brilliant. What he did was brilliant. I mean, I talked to Rian Johnson. I don't know if you guys were aware of that, but
Yeah.
I got to
Yeah?
tell him that stuff.
That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And we talked for like an hour. It was so awesome. But I told him, I'm like, the throne room, I'm watching it. I'm like, put this in my veins. Like, I love everything that's happening in this scene.
Yeah.
And I thought having the bond, the force bond, so brilliant when you're writing enemies to lovers, because they cannot be in a room together without trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so he made a way for them to have to connect, for them to see and be intimate and have to, you know, rely on one another for their growth and their change. And I told him it was brilliant. I'm like, I'm sitting in the theater going, this is so smart,
Yeah.
you know, to do this. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. I have listened to Ryan talk about it a few times. Ryan, as if I know him. I listened to 2 different podcasts that he was on. One with one of his friends, and I can't remember his name. I'm losing my mind. But he was talking about it in like a casual sense, like it just comes to him, and I was like, this is incredible. I hope to goodness that my brain just starts to compute the way that he does, because it's amazing. Next favorite question. Favorite lightsaber, if you have one.
You know what? Honestly, it's probably Kylo Ren's Crossfire lightsaber.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's
awesome.
my favorite.
It's awesome. What color would your blade be if you had one?
Okay, I would probably be yellow, because I am like a huge scholar and nerd and into this stuff. Like, I would love
Me
purple,
too.
and I would pick purple for the same reason that Samuel L. Jackson picked it, just because it looks cool.
Yeah.
But, you know, not because, you know, like dark and light like Revan or whatever. But I like, realistically, it would probably be yellow.
I love that. I always say like I always say red, even though I'm not really sure. Like, obviously I don't want to be a bad guy, but also I probably would be a bad guy for the aesthetic. And then I'm always like, but if like black was a color and it wasn't only the dark saber, I would pick a black blade, because it's my favorite color and it's so unique.
I'd probably go with white, because, like, especially because, like, Ahsoka is also, like, a huge favorite of mine, and just the symbolism behind having the white blade. The fact that she was able to, like, heal the crystals with the Force, and then they become white. That's just, like, a huge thing for me. I love that. So I feel like I would either have like a white saber or like a green one, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say white or yellow for you. That's the vibe I'm getting, Grace.
Because I'm a historian too, so
Yeah.
I totally get the scholar vibe.
If you could have any job in Star Wars, what would it be?
I mean, if I get to pick,
Yeah.
it's princess, right? Like,
True.
you're gonna be princess of a planet,
Yes.
you know, or queen. Queen would be better.
Mm-hmm.
But
Hell yeah.
realistically, like, I'll probably end up being like, you know, broom boy, a slave somewhere, cleaning something, you know, like.
The universe.
Like, we have
is messed up.
grandiose ideas of what we want to be. Like, yeah, I'll be the starfighter pilot. No, you're probably gonna be cleaning out horses' stalls. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I was listening to Black Series Rebels, and that is where I got that question from, because somebody one day said something about being like what Finn was, being literally like a custodian on a starship. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably what I would be. It's just how I would probably be a 5-year keeper, but I would not be a 5-year racer, you know? I literally am a horse keeper currently at my job, so I'm like, I'd probably be an animal care in space.
I'd be Jocasta Nu, probably.
True.
Because
So true.
I'm an archivist.
Last funsy question. If you could own any creature from the Star Wars universe, what would it be?
It's a hard one. You know, I would have to choose Porg.
Yeah.
I told Brian Johnson how much I love porgs. He's like, I have an animatronic porg, and like it was in a different room, and he's like you could see he was considering going and getting it, and I wanted to encourage him, but I'm like, no, we'll waste time doing that. But yeah, I love porgs. How cute are they? Like,
Yeah.
They're my favorite.
I love them. I love the little scream that they do, and I wanted to get
That's
that one for my car, the little suction cup one.
Yeah.
I still might do it, but haven't yet.
Do it.
So before we jump into the book information, do you have any like Star Wars questions for me or Grace? You don't have to, but I figured I'd ask.
You know, like an hour from now, I'm gonna have like all these Star Wars questions to ask you.
And that's fine.
But like, I swear, when people ask me this stuff, I kind of go, like your brain doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I do the
can't
same
think of
thing.
anything right now.
I do the same thing. Even when I like write down my stuff, I told you I took all these notes. Even when I write down my stuff, I'm like, I wrote that funny. How do I say that out loud? And it's like, just read it. Just read what you wrote. So let's just dive right in, I guess. Can you tell us about your celebrity encounter with Adam Driver that you based your book off of?
Okay, yeah, this is all Star Wars based, like
Yeah.
the whole thing. So I watched
ready.
Rise of Skywalker,
Mm-hmm.
and I was devastated by the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, as someone who's been a lifelong fan, I'm like, all 3 original characters sacrificed themselves for him.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted him to live.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a soulmate. He turned to the light.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm waiting for like a psych moment, you know, and like when they ran the credits, I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how could this be over? Like, I'm looking, like, was there a mistake? What happened? I thought, how could they end a 40-year saga with this last Skywalker dying?
Really
like, how
sad
could that
death.
be the ending of it? So I was really upset, and I'm like, I have to know if they filmed an alternate ending. Like, but who are you going to ask? There's
Right.
no one to ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was really upset. Like, it's all I talked about for like 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Like, my family was kind of like, can you please stop talking about Star Wars? Like,
No.
we love you, but oh my gosh. Because I was really devastated by it. Like, I was so connected to, I mean, that last 10 minutes when Adam Driver becomes Ben Solo, like, I remember sitting there going, he is a completely different person.
Yeah.
Like, he is so talented. He doesn't even say anything.
Yep.
And I was blown away. So, like I said, my romance heart, who had fallen in love with him in Last Jedi, is waiting for this happy ending where they get to restore balance, and they're the dyad, and they're going to fix everything that's wrong with the Jedi. And so I'm like, I want to ask someone if they filmed an alternate ending. And so I've always enjoyed doing like charity auctions. Like, I'm now at a point in my life where I can do that, and I've had really neat experiences. You know, like a couple of years ago, I got to go out to Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and be on set for a day.
Oh, awesome.
And that was amazing. I got to talk to Matt Lanter, who does the voice of
Oh.
Anakin Skywalker,
Yeah.
and
Matt Lanter's cool.
he was really fun. He told me a story about how he proposed to his wife, and it was like the cutest story ever. Like,
Aw.
so adorable. But,
That's
you know, so
cute.
I've had these experiences, and so the day that I'm like, I remember saying out loud, I need to talk to someone about this. The next day, there was an auction to meet Adam Driver at the SAG Awards. And so I'm like, hello, universe, I got the sign. I'm going to meet Adam Driver.
Wow.
And, like, knowing what I know about him now, I would never have done this,
Mhm.
but I didn't know anything about the man. And I posted on Twitter, hey, I'm going to go meet Adam Driver. And there's some fans who are like, okay, he's really kind of socially awkward. He hates red carpets. You know, so just keep that in mind. You're going to have to run the conversation. I'm like, cool, I can do that. That's fine.
Right.
So we get out there. I took my 12-year-old daughter with me, and it was this just. I'm a huge fangirl. Like I love pop culture, and people are like, "Why would you want to do that?" I'm like, "Because it was the best. I had so much fun." So I get out there, and like I'm meeting Henry Winkler comes over, tells my daughter she's beautiful, and sends an autograph for her, and I'm like dying, like the fawns, you know.
Yeah.
And Carrie Elwes from Princess Bride, I'm, you know, but I can talk to everyone. Like I'm like, "Hi, great to meet you. You know, I'm such a big fan. You know, good luck tonight. I love your dress." You know, Helena Bonham Carter comes over and sends an autograph for me, asks how to spell my name.
Incredible.
You know, it was incredible. And so, you know, you're waiting for that moment when Adam Driver comes over. He's one of the last people there, and you can't miss him on the carpet because he's like literally a head above everybody else. And he's walking towards us, and he is just this big, imposing man, and my brain turned off. I cannot tell you what happened to me in that moment, other than it just went blank. And I stood there like, oh my gosh, I can't talk. He comes over and he's like, "Thank you so much for, you know, donating," because it was for his charity that he was doing it.
Right.
"Thank you so much for donating. It's so nice to meet you." He shakes our hands, and you know, he's like, "So where are you from?" And I sat there and I thought, why does Adam Driver care where I'm from? Like that was what happened in my head. And of course he's trying to make small talk, and he's trying to have a conversation with me, and I am just so freaked out that I can't even do it. And he has to ask me the question again.
Oh no.
And I tell him, like, "From Utah," you know, he asks where the city I'm from is at, and I'm trying to describe it to him, like, how he's not even familiar with landmarks. How can I tell him, you know? But the whole thing was just me not being able to talk, and this poor man who doesn't want to have to make conversation had to carry the entire conversation by himself.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to ask him my questions, and it was not an environment that I could have asked him anyways. I mean, I had no idea what I was. You're sitting in bleachers above the red carpet.
Right.
So the celebrities are like down below you.
Yeah.
And everybody around you is screaming. I mean, trying to get the attention of whoever, you know, is walking by.
Yeah.
It's very, very loud. So it's very difficult to really even talk. And like there was a point where he signed my daughter this autograph, this huge long autograph. And he reads to her what it says, but at the moment, because it was so loud, I thought he was saying goodbye, like, "I'm done with you now. You're like, this is over." You know, because like thanks for coming out. And so I'm like, "Oh, I guess this is not." I'm like, "Well, can we get pictures?" He's like, "Oh yeah, of course. And he goes over, and his publicist assistant took pictures for us. And he's like, shakes our hands. He's like, "Nice to meet you." And he walks away. And as he walked away, I thought, this is a book where a girl meets her favorite celebrity, can't talk, can't process her brain. And that was the entire idea, and that's where it came from. And I enjoy him, like, just I think as a human being, he's fascinating. Where he was a Marine and now he's this artist. I think that juxtaposition is fascinating as a character. So my heroes like him, you know. But you know, people are like, I don't actually know anything about Adam Driver. Like, I know nothing about him personally. We had no kind of private conversation or connection at all. It was just very much. It was a minute and a half long. It's like on my Instagram. You can go watch the video. You know, my daughter filmed it because she's 12. They film everything. So, yeah, it was really, really fun. And from that, I started kind of writing this book and imagining just kind of a similar hero who was an actor and a girl who she's a dog groomer and meets him, and you know, their first meeting does not go well. That he's kind of arrogant and thinks she's like a stalker, and she's just annoyed, even though she's this huge fan. And so she tells him, "I don't even know who you are." You know, and of course that kind of intrigues him because that doesn't happen very much to someone like him, you know, where he's this big celebrity. And so he makes him kind of want to find out more about her, and he pursues her a little bit. And so, yeah, that Juliet has a secret where, because I've actually written a couple of celebrities falling in love with regular people books before. And so I thought you have to kind of be careful to not keep treading the same ground.
Right.
So, you know, as an author, I was like, what can I do that will keep them apart? That will make it so she doesn't, of course, just instantly start dating him, because of course you would, right? Like, so the thing is, she has a kissing fear. She has an actual fear of kissing. It's a real thing. She has anxiety attacks when she even thinks about it or tries to do it. And so I thought that would be kind of interesting. And, you know, how does a celebrity deal with the girl who he can't even kiss, you know? So it was really fun to write, but that's kind of where that came from.
That is awesome. Grace, did you have something?
I did. You mentioned, like, not knowing a ton about Adam Driver and that kind of stuff before you met him. Did you happen to see the TED Talk he gave, like, about being a Marine and then turning, like, to an actor and kind of, like, turning to acting?
I watched it after, when I decided to write the book, so I could have kind of more information and more knowledge about who he is. Like, the TED Talk's phenomenal. He is such a great speaker and was very funny.
It's fantastic.
But yeah, I did watch that, and read some interviews and some things where he's talking, and I took some things from him, but like I said, Noah's not him. It's Noah's very much a distinct character to me. Who's
right.
I don't actually know anything about Adam Driver. He could be snowing all of us. And he had that interview with Carrie Fisher where she told him, "Pretend like you're down to earth. People love that stuff." And so I'm like, probably no, he's just pretending he's down to earth, and we're all just being suckered in by it.
Right.
Right.
That is awesome. That is a very cool. I know it seems disorienting now, or what it was then, but it is such an awesome experience that you had. Like I kind of had not the same thing, definitely, but when I went and met Sam Witwer, I have only ever met celebrities through the photo ops,
right,
at conventions. So I met Sam Witwer.
Some on accident.
Yeah, yeah, and I met Jonas, and Ray Park. Ray Park, super chill. I met him while I was working one day, and then had a photo op with him after, and so it was very like fun and all of that. And then Jonas, also very disorientingly tall. So I just went and got the picture and left. And then Sam, I like embarrassed myself in front of. I was just like, "Oh, I've been following you since you were Being Human." And he's like, "Oh my god, thanks." And I was like, "Was that weird?" So I like left traumatized. So I get that. Like my brain was working, and then I walked in, and then it was not. And I also identify with Juliet in that way. I just right off the bat, your book has been so relatable. And I feel like a lot of people are going to get that because I am going to pass it on to my roommates after I'm done. And I know my one other roommate who kind of gets the celebrity thing will also be like, yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It is very good.
My sister is going to love this book.
Yeah.
Like, I'm passing it on to her afterward. And she's big into, like, romances and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Thank you. Like, that's so nice. But yeah, my celebrity things have been the charity auctions, and that's how I met Daisy and Ryan. They did charity auctions.
Mm-hmm.
And with Daisy, I saw her, because there's a site, CharityBuzz.com. They do all kinds of stuff, like professional things and athletics and buying certain kinds of wine or taking vacations. So mine's always the celebrity entertainment stuff. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And Daisy put up, they did one for Daisy. And I'm like, I'm going to win that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask her my Raylo questions. I didn't get to ask Adam Driver. And so I bid on that one, and I was babysitting that auction. Like, I was going to win it, and I did.
Nice.
And at the same time, Rian Johnson comes up, and I'm like, what are the odds of this? Like, for a totally different charity, totally different thing. And I'm like, well, I'm going to bid on that, but I didn't really watch it, but I won. And I was so glad that I won. Like, that was like one of the best conversations I think I've ever had in my entire life. It was phenomenal and amazing, and he's incredible. But yeah, and so one of the things in the sequel, if you've read it, there's this thing where they're talking about Juliet and Noah are talking about their favorite things. And he asked her if she has a favorite director, and she's like, "Oh, Rian Johnson, I love that guy." Especially Knives Out. So I read it to Rian Johnson when I talked to him. And he was so flattered and laughed, and he just thought it was so cute. He's like, "Thank you so much." And what's funny is one of my editors told me to take it out. She's like, "That's still like a niche thing that no one's gonna get it." And I feel like it detracts. And I'm like, I really love it. I love Rian Johnson. I want to leave it in. Mm-hmm. And so I left it in. And so I had no idea a year ago before I ever talked to him that was ever going to happen. So it was so much fun to get to tell him, "Hey, you're in my book." He seemed to really enjoy that. So
that's awesome. He seems like the kind of guy that would. The only time that I had ever that I've ever encountered him, it was my first Star Wars celebration. I went on a whim. It was here in Orlando. And it was the same one where I guess he was also, like, working the crowd. Mm-hmm. Literally right after I left the line. And I was like, oh. I always do that. Miss him by a hair. I do have a question for you about the book. And I hope it's not a spoiler, and if it is, I will take it out. But, is the Duel of the Fae also a Star Wars reference?
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's Duel of the Fates, Colin Trevorrow, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it, but I wanted it to be a Star Wars reference that Star Wars fans would get, but like nobody else would even see it. They would just read past it, and it would just because I'm making a Fae series where it's like Malak Shadowfire is Kylo Ren, and All In a Morning Song is Rey. Like that very much is part of it, but I'm making them fairies, and it's different, so I don't get in trouble by Star Wars Lucasfilm. Right. So yeah, but I feel like with writing this book that I put so many like Raylo and Star Wars things in there for people who are fans that if you're a fan, you're gonna pick up on it. You're gonna see, was that a Star Wars reference? Yeah. those Easter eggs are in there. And so, but fortunately, if you're not,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to read it, and you're not going to even register it.
Yeah.
You're just going to keep going. And
Just
so
gonna be
it can
part
be
of
read,
life.
I feel like, by anyone.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
Easter eggs are like my favorite aspect of things. I'm always like,
everything.
whenever we're talking about like books or we discuss the movies, we discuss the Clone Wars, that kind of stuff, I'm always looking for like the really small details and being like, oh, this person mentioned this thing, and like this was in this place, like, and things like that. So I really do appreciate that you snuck that kind of stuff into the book.
Yeah.
I did. I
It was
love it.
awesome. So I know that you wanted to mention about necessity is the mother of invention. So is there anything else from your life that has influenced the book?
My life, the thing with being a writer is you just kind of take stuff from all over. You know, like one of the things is Juliet has a favorite pair of pink Converse that she wears to the award show, and that's kind of something her and Noah talk about in the first interaction.
Mm-hmm.
My 12-year-old daughter wore her pink Converse to the SAG Awards.
That's awesome.
That's why I picked it, you know, and because you're looking for things that are real and things that you can bring to characters that are real life that other people will appreciate or that they'll relate to. Because it would be so easy to make your characters really flat and, you know, just kind of stereotypical. And it's difficult to struggle with that and find things from your own life that you can, you know, you can bring in there. And for me, obviously, Star Wars is a huge part of it. And so much of it is, you know, my despair over Ben Solo dying is a big part of, you know, Malik Shadowfire dying. And that gets addressed a lot in the book, you know, how upset the characters are about it. But yeah, getting to kind of take your real life and use it, and I think it makes it better. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, people tell you all the time that to be a writer, you have to sit down and write every day, and you have to have this schedule, and you have to do this. And I say that's bullcrap. That part of being a writer is experiencing life. It's getting out there and doing these things that you enjoy, that feed your soul, and that you can use going forward. You know, that you can have these stories and, you know, have this stuff in there that other people can enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's understandable. I am going on a road trip soon, and I just finished a class where I'm writing for TV, and we had to write a TV show, and they were like, try to make it an original idea, and I was like, oh, I'll write about girls going on a road trip. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but then I was like, how extreme can I make all of the experiences that I'm probably going to have, and then just take it down a whole other road where it can just be fake. And I was like, we'll see, and then when I go on this road trip, hopefully more things will happen that I can write about. Okay, so the necessity is the mother of invention. This is how family emergency led to your career as a romance novelist. So I would love to hear more about that.
My oldest son was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we were a young married couple. I was pregnant with our second child. And back then, not a lot was known, you know, and insurance wouldn't pay for anything. And someone came to us and they said, you know, you have to have this thing called applied behavioral analysis, or ABA. And it cost $10,000. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it might as well have been $10 million. Like, there was no way that we could have come up with $10,000. And this is before GoFundMe, or, you know, there was nowhere for us to go to try and get help. And so I kind of was like thinking about it and praying about it, and what do I do? And kind of like the answer that I got was write a book. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. I'm not gonna. You know, I had never grown up wanting to be a writer. It was not on my radar. It was not like part of a life plan at all. And so I kind of just forgot about it. And then one of the things we did, we were doing some fundraisers trying to raise money for him. And one of the things we did was at my local church, everybody gave us stuff for a garage sale. We had a big garage sale in the parking lot. And so I sent out press releases hoping local papers would cover it and we'd get more people to come out and raise more money. And one of the reporters contacted me and said, you know, can I come interview you? And I'm like, yeah, that would be great. And they came to the house and I opened the door and she's like, okay, before I come inside, I have to ask you, are you a writer? And I was like, that is a really weird, why would you say that? And she's like, well, your press release was so well written, I just assumed that you were a writer. And it was kind of like, all right, universe, let's proceed. Got it. I'm going to write. And that's really why I started writing.
Wow. That is incredible. I love that. I feel like maybe this is just like my current life. I feel like when the universe tells you something, it like takes a minute just for it to like settle. You know, I also never expected to be going to school for writing. I work at Disney, and they have a program called Disney Aspire where they will pay for you to go to school. There were a very select amount of programs and like types of programs, and writing happened to be one of them. And I was like, oh, I'll like go into entertainment management because I love the entertainment side of things. I love stage entertainment, movie, TV shows, any of the above. And if I can get this and get into entertainment here, I can keep moving around and do whatever. And I saw the creative writing and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'll keep that on the back burner. And then I sob watching movies. And I'm like, why do movies speak so loudly to me? I should explore that. And so I started to, like, do some, like, self-reflection. So I feel like when the universe listens, or when the universe tells you something, you gotta listen at some point. Yeah, exactly. So, Grace, before I move into my book questions, do you have any book questions?
I do.
All right, bring them on.
So, I'm trying to find them, I'm sorry. What sort of, like, influences kind of inspire your writing? So, like, from other authors or genres, are there specific types of things that you always tend to pull from, or does it, like, depend on what you're writing? Because I know that you did say you do favor, like, romance books, but, I just wasn't sure if there's, like, other kind of aspects you tend to pull from.
I don't know that I do pull from anybody, because what I'm writing is what I want to read, and I felt like I couldn't really find. And so I'm like, I have this very kind of distinct romantic comedy thing that I enjoy, and it's not to say there of course there are other authors who are like that, like Christina Lauren, is like that, or Sophie Kinsella. But for me, it's like, I like this, and I want to write this. And I actually, with my publishing journey, what had happened was I got published with a small regional publisher at first, and it was not a great experience. And I kind of stopped writing for a while. I had 2 more kids. I stopped writing. And then there was the big indie movement that happened where you could publish books yourself. And it's like, again, that was all I talked about for like 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. You don't have to write to what someone wants. You can write whatever you want. And so I did. I wrote a book that I think was a good little book. And, all the indie guys were like, if you write a good book, the cream's going to rise to the top. People will find you. Well, nobody was finding me. I'd sold 7 copies like in a month. Like, that was a good month. And so I thought there has to be a way to get noticed. This is before you could do like Facebook ads or anything like that. So you were really kind of on your own. And Amazon, I thought that's who you want to be in partnership with, is Amazon. Like, who pushes books better than Amazon? Yeah. But to get in with the Romance House Motlake, you have to have an agent. I didn't have an agent. I hadn't really pursued that, so I wasn't sure what to do. So I was going to do this one thing where I was going to publish a bunch of books at once. I wrote the first book. It's called Royal Date. And it's about a girl who goes to this fictional country and meets the crown prince of the nation. I love that little book. But I wrote it, and the date I was finished, Amazon announced a contest called Kindle Scout. And it's kind of like American Idol, but for books. That's awesome. And again, that felt very much like a universe sign of the day I finish this book, that, comes out, and I'm like, I'm going to enter that. And it sounds really conceited. I don't mean to sound this way, but I knew I was going to win. Yeah. Like, it was just this feeling I had. Yeah. Like, I'm going to win this. And I thought it's important to enter at the beginning because, who's the first winner of American Idol? You can tell me who that is. We know it's Kelly Clarkson, but I said, who wins season 16? You'd be like, like on the ground floor. Like, that's the great place in a contest like that. So I did. I won. And the woman who ran it, she contacted me and she's like, why did you enter? And I said, well, I really want to work with your romance house. That's kind of my goal, my dream someday. And she's like, well, that's cool. And kind of talked to me. And a couple weeks later, the woman that I now know is the editorial director of Motlake Publishing Romance. She calls me and she's like, so I want to talk to you. And so I thought it was just a foot in the door. I'm doing a nice thing for a colleague, And at the end of the conversation, she's like, well, I want to offer you a 2-book contract. And I was dumbfounded, like, totally, like, this doesn't happen. Like, you're in publishing at all. This kind of stuff does not happen. And I'm like, okay. So I've been with them for 5 years now, and from them I got my agent, Sarah Wilson, who I love. And we're hoping to expand more from other publishers, because Amazon's done phenomenal for me. I had my book Roommate came out last year, and in September it was the most read book on Amazon's website. Wow. That's a pretty big honor. That's amazing. That's awesome. Yeah. So I've done really well in that space. Thank you. But I'm kind of hoping to expand and get some different markets out there. But that's. So for me, like, my very long answer to what am I inspired by? I think I'm inspired by everything, but I really am focused on, this is my voice, this is what I am good at, this is what I enjoy reading, and I enjoy writing it. And people are always like, why don't you write this? I'm like, well, I have to like what I'm writing too, because if I don't like it, you as a reader are going to know you're not going to like it either. It's just not going to appeal to you. So, yeah, I think you have to like what you're doing, and I think you look for inspiration everywhere. I mean, you want to be the first you. You don't want to be a knockoff of somebody else, or you're like this author. No, you're the first you. So that would be, I think what you're looking for is you have to find your voice. You have to find that thing that makes you, you. And that's not easy. I started off writing historical fiction, and I love it, but it's
right
not,
up my alley.
Yeah, it's not I'm not best served there. I think I do okay with it, but I'm much better in this space.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I love that. I really love the way that you built the relationship of these characters. I only made it like halfway through the book. So I'm probably going to finish the other half in the next 2 days, though. It's very good. I know I said this before, like, it's relatable. I felt everything that Juliet was feeling as you were describing it. So I'm planning on going out and getting roommate, but for anybody that has read your other books or plans on it after they read The Seat Filler, how is this book going to be different? Or how is this book different from your other ones?
It's not. It's more Sariah Wilson. I mean, you're going to be, it's fun, it's flirtatious. I think you're going to laugh, you're going to swoon, you're going to, get involved with it. I don't know. I write regular books about regular people falling in love, but there's just something about the whole celebrity that feels very like Cinderella-esque, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we don't really write, I mean, people still write princes. I've written princes. Or, billionaires are kind of, current social environment, I don't know that billionaires are the best route to go down. There's some political things kind of caught up in there. But you can write a celebrity, and it's like, that feels very realistic. Like, I wrote a book called Starstruck, and it's about a celebrity who falls in love with a girl on Twitter. They make a cameo in The Seat Filler. It's a couple she meets. But it's a real life story. There's an actor, Jake T. Austin, who there was a fan on Twitter who's like, I'm going to marry Jake. I love him. Oh my God, he's a fan.
Yeah.
And they met in person. And whatever happened in that 5-minute meet and greet, they dated for like 4 years. They fell in love. And so I'm like, I'm going to make that into a book. That's awesome. Because what a way with social media to meet. So I think because of social media, we feel a lot more like celebrities are accessible. That you can meet someone. You could get their attention. They could, they could pick you out of the crowd. You're the girl they're interested in. So, I think that's something that people enjoy. And I do keep kind of coming back to that. And I'm like, I don't want to only write that. I'm trying to write other stuff too. But I kind of feel like I do keep coming back to it for that reason. I love a Cinderella story. Yeah.
I mean, in the world of social media, everybody wants to feel like it's like relevant and important, and there's no better way to do that than romance. Like, people will cling to that. I'm clinging to that. I like this being at home. Like, I go to work, I come home, and I'm like, oh, I gotta update the Kessel Run Weekly socials, or I gotta update mine. I'm a photographer, so I post to that page. So it's just like keeping track of all that. And there's like streamers that I follow. I'm like, oh, when are they on next? So it's part of your life at a certain point. And I definitely think that that's something to grasp. Grace, do you have another one?
Sorry.
No,
I keep trying to pull this up, but it's closing on me.
It's okay.
So, how... This is phrased a little weird, sorry. How has your own happily ever after, so to speak, sort of influenced your romance novels or your, like, relationships with your characters?
I will tell you, I had a difficult happily ever after. My road was not easy. Like, I don't think I could write my story because I think people would be mad. It very much, I felt like when it was happening, I felt like I was in a telenovela when it was going on. That my husband's parents did not want us to get married and did everything in their power to prevent that from happening. And that he was so, he was their golden boy. He did whatever his mom and dad told him. And so it was very difficult, what can I say without like getting sued for libel? It really was like living in a soap opera. That's the only way I can think of to describe it. There was just like these melodramatic, huge things happening all the time. We broke up like 2 or 3 times, and it not because we didn't love each other, not because we didn't see a future, but because his parents were so awful to him, and he was living at home to go to college, and so it was this constant daily pressure where it was just so difficult for him. But he kept, I love you, I want to be with you, and and it's. I wish I could tell you that got better. It didn't. It's been gosh, I've been married for maybe 25 years this year.
Wow.
And, you know,
Congratulations.
thank you. But, you know, that it didn't change in like the movies. Like when I watched that movie Monster-in-Law that had Jennifer Lopez and, oh gosh, I can see her face and I can think of her name.
Yes. Me too.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But they make it into the movie. And I watched that and it felt so false to me. Like it felt so fake. And I'm like, it's not going to be better. Like all these problems you guys are having, they don't just go away because you decided they go away. This is going to keep happening the rest of your marriage. Like it was very distressing to me to watch. But I almost feel like because of that, I have a really strong belief in happily ever afters. I know it can happen. I know that you can overcome all obstacles and that you can slay all the dragons in your path and find your way to the end. And I would say it very much influences that's what I want to give people. And I think life is so hard, especially now, especially with everything that's going on. I had a sister pass away when I was in high school. And my mom, of course, we were all devastated, but my mom especially so. And one of the things she did was she read romances and watched romantic comedies. And I remember asking her, why are you doing this? And she's like, because for 2 hours, I get to forget. For 2 hours, the pain is not so bad. And I love the idea, and it's one of the reasons why I write what I do. If I can do that for someone else, and I have gotten reviews that have brought me to tears, like a woman who said, I'm sitting with my mother in chemo, and your book is what's getting me through this. Like, that's overwhelming. That's, like, the most incredible thing, and it's all I could ask for. Yeah. You know, people are like, why aren't you writing more serious books? And I'm like, I want to write a book that you just get to have fun for a few hours, and you get to fall in love, and you get to be happy, and I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. That is incredible. Your story is incredible.
Thank you.
I'm amazed. This is not as awesome of a question, but as a new writer myself, I'm really fascinated with character creation. So I'm just like, this could be a fake Easter egg that I made up in my head, but having Noah's date be named Hannah and me in my head be thinking about Adam Driver, I was thinking of Girls and Hannah from Girls. And I was like, this doesn't sound like Hannah at all. Like that Hannah, obviously. And then Shelby herself and Juliet being a dog groomer. So with your character creation, do these things just kind of, are they more like signs from the universe, things that come to you? Are they just things that you design in your head based on like, okay, well, I've created this really great celebrity based on this real person. What am I supposed to do with this other character? How do you work through character creation?
It is completely both. And I will tell you that one of the best things that happens as a writer, and you may have experienced this, is when the words are flowing out of you like somebody else is writing them.
Yeah.
You know, I've actually gone back through my own work and read a passage and been like, I wrote that? Like, I don't remember writing that. You know, that's really good. Wow.
Yeah.
And it just feels almost like somebody else did it. I'm very much, when I write a book, and don't ever write books the way I write books. I write books in a month. It takes me about a month to write a novel. It's like 90,000 words, and I write it in a month. It's miserable. My family hates it. My husband, like, it makes him insane because it's all I do. From the time I get up until I go to bed, I'm writing this book, and that's really bad. And it's because I'm a procrastinator, and my brain now knows I can write a book in a month. So even when I try to start early, it like doesn't work very well. Yeah. But the benefit to it, and what I tell people is, I am living in that world. I am in that story. You know, however many hours a day I'm awake, I'm in that story, and so I think it allows that muse to come in even easier. Like, it's easier to get those moments where it's just flowing and stuff's just happening. And sometimes I feel like stuff just happens and I don't even realize where it comes from. But like, you know, Noah's last name is Douglas. And I picked it, like, I had a fan, I have a reader group, and I had a reader suggest it because it sounds kind of like Kirk Douglas or, you know, Michael Douglas. And I'm like, yeah, it sounds very movie. It's Adam Driver's middle name. His middle name is Douglas. And so I picked it.
I love it.
And had no, like, I didn't know. And then as I'm writing it, I realized that, like, Adam Douglas Driver, and I'm like, oh, crap, it's his middle name. And I'm like, well, but I love this name now. Do I leave it? And so I wrote to my agent, my editor. I'm like, what should we do? They're like, oh, just leave it. It's fine.
Nice.
So sometimes stuff like that just kind of happens where it's like this weird kind of kismet thing happening. But I will tell you that for me, it's getting the scenario. And the scenario was girl meets her favorite celebrity. I'm going to make him kind of like Adam Driver because I think that's cool. Like, he's an artist and a Marine. And then it was, okay, so what kind of woman is going to interact with him? What's going to catch his attention? It's going to be that she's snarky and that she, you know, doesn't really put up with his crap like maybe everybody else in his life does, and gets all, you know, he's surrounded by yes men all the time. Right. What would appeal to him? And then for her, what appeals to her? Like, yeah, there's this celebrity thing, but at some point that's going to wear off.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be this thing that continues. And so it can even become a hindrance, you know? And so then it's like, okay, well, how are they going to meet after this? And him coming after her, that actually happened to me. I met a soap star that I loved like 20 years ago, like it was a really long time ago. And I got to have dinner with him and one of my best friends. And I left my little purse. And here's what happened. Okay, so my friend and I, we were obsessed with this couple. We were obsessed with him, like just huge fans. And so we're having dinner with him. And so when he got up, we stole stuff from his thing. And like I took a straw and she took his fork, just so that we would have these objects. Like he put his mouth on this, he held this.
Yeah.
And like, so stupid. But we did that. And so I put the straw in my little purse. Well, my purse was unzipped and it was like coming out. He took my little handbag and he's bringing it to me. And I can see the straw sticking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Like, thank you. So following her in the theater, that was based on a real life experience that happened to me. And, but she's embarrassing there. But like, fortunately, she hadn't stolen anything of his. Right. So you get to kind of get these little things. And why would he want to? What would he do to bring her into his life? I knew he was going to have a dog, and so I thought, well, I'll make her a dog groomer. And then she has a mobile dog grooming unit, and she can come to his home, and then that's a chance for them to interact. And I initially, when I first thought of this book, was I was going to have her take care of his dog. I was going to have her. He needed a babysitter to watch the dog because he's traveling or whatever. But then you kind of get in the whole, like, me too, you know, you don't want to have him in a position of power over her. Like, that's not okay in romance anymore. Right. So you want it to be on equal footing. And so I had to change that. I'm like, all right, for her, she'll go the neighbor and she'll take care of her dog. And that way they're in close proximity. That's important in romance. You got to get them, you know, near each other and having spend time together. And so then when she finally tells him about her kissing phobia, it then becomes this very easy, like, you know, well, he already likes her. He'd want to help her with this, you know. Right. He cares about her as a person, and yeah, I'd be happy to do this. And I mean, I had a little bit of that kind of phobia. Like mine was not as bad when I was young, but I did have a little bit of that. And I had a friend in college who was like this. Like that's where I took this from. She had full blown, you know. And as a phobia goes, it's actually one of the easiest to conquer. It's actually much harder to do things like tarantulas or something like that. But the kissing phobia is just finding someone who will kind of work through it with you and getting to kiss someone, and then you kind of get over it. That's cool. I thought, you know, and so I did a lot of research and bringing that in. But yeah, I think with drawing those characters, it's like, for me too, because I write sweet, I don't ever put any sex in my books. It's much harder. You know, you have to figure out, I have to keep them apart even more. Like, I don't even have them kiss until usually like 50% through the book. So how do I keep them apart? What things are going to keep them from being together? You know, whatever that motivation is, you have to come up with that. You have to think about, you know, what's going to be the thing that keeps them from being able to be together, and then that will change. You know, as the book goes on and the character and the relationship progresses, it'll change. Right.
That's fascinating.
It's like the slow burn trope.
Yeah.
I am. That is what I write. I write nothing but slow burn. Like, you will always get that from me. There might be other tropes there too, but it will always be slow burn, because that's what appeals to me. Like, I will take Pride and Prejudice with Darcy lovingly looking at look at she helps Georgiana, like, or the recent one where he does the hand flex, you know, like that's
yes.
That, you know, and that's something else about Star Wars too, is I thought we get this slow burn in this sequels too, and I love that. Like today was just like people kiss, and kissing within 5 minutes they're having sex, and I'm like, but women like this. We like the build up and the tension and the will they, won't they, and are they gonna touch hands? And why do you think we still watch these period movies? Because we get that. We get to go in these historical dramas, and we get to have that again, you know. So I like writing that way. That's the stuff that appeals to me as a reader. So as a writer, it's what I write.
Yeah. That is awesome.
I'm watching Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman right now, and I totally get that, because like they don't get together until like they don't get together till the train when she's about to leave. Yeah.
And then like how excited are you when they get together? Like it's like the greatest thing ever. I feel like that's one of as you're writing TV shows, I feel like that's one of the biggest downfalls right now for TV for me as a viewer, is I feel like you guys are rushing romance, you're rushing relationships, and people will get invested. They will watch, and they will watch for seasons waiting for people to fall in love, because we get that invested in it. Yeah. So
my TV show definitely so at first it like features, it's very like Broad City but on the road. Broad City and like New Girl meet. Yeah. And so like at first it's like funny and chill, and then there's gonna be like all of this drama popping up in one of my characters' lives, and one of those is an ex, because I'm like, I need to make this version a slow burn before I introduce like the new romance. They'll both be new because there's not going to be like a long history in the first part. But yeah, I keep thinking about that because I'm very hesitant about including sex in my pieces because I just like, I mean, I'm 25, so it's not, I've had experience, but it's not something that I just want to be like, I just want to like flaunt into my writing. I want to explore the romance part of it because, again, like that's what we're fascinated by. Watching, I don't know if you guys have seen Someone Great on Netflix. It's where like Lizzo's Truth Hurts like made its like debut, I think. It is awesome. It's a very like female power movie, but it's got a romance base behind it, and it is so good. And the romance between the main character and her boyfriend, and kind of the like tragedy that goes on between them. It's not even about that. It's not about the physical relationship. It's about all the things that they went through outside of that, and that is what makes you so interested in her and his outcome. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think in writing the seat filler, like I'm looking, where can I make them intimate? What can I write that is intimate? Because that is the part that really matters. Like, especially as a reader and a viewer, is you're looking for how are they intimate? Of course, going back to Star Wars, you know, with Ben and Rey in Last Jedi, that intimacy where she's looking to him for answers because no one else is giving it to her, and she's reaching out to him, and they find it. They both are lonely. They both feel abandoned. They both feel, you know, there's so much that connects them that, you know, and then touching hands in that hut, I remember going, oh, like, it was so amazing. Like, you know, and I'm sure, like, fanboys are watching, that's stupid. But I'm like, as, you know, the women who are watching it are like, that's amazing. Like, we love it.
It's the hand flex.
Cool. It is very much the hand flex, you know, and even people are like, the kiss came out of nowhere. I'm like, did you watch all the movies?
Where were you?
Like, they've been falling in love for 3 movies. What are you talking about? This came out of nowhere, you know? But I feel like it's, and the thing is, as for looking for readership or viewership, you know, there are people who prefer very steamy stories. That's what they, you know, they like to write, they like to read. And there are people who prefer very sweet stories. So the sweet readers are never going to read your steamy stuff. But steamy readers will come read sweet stuff. Like, you can get both those audiences. And if you go about the steamy side, you're missing all this readership or viewership over here. And so I kind of feel like the reasons why I do it too is I've gotten review people like, there wasn't enough sex in here for me. And it's fine, you know, that's not what I'm writing. And, you know, there's so much for you to consume out there that you can't get that. But I feel like by doing that, you're almost opening your options instead of limiting them, to be honest. Yeah,
absolutely. Grace, do you have any other book questions or any questions at all for her before we close out?
I do not.
All right. I have one more Star Wars question for you. So based on the sequel trilogy and just kind of how much we've talked about it and all of that, I'm curious to know if there were, because I'm most curious to know what would have happened if they had had more time to explore their relationship, because they set it in motion and they made you feel it, and they kind of made you feel it in The Rise of Skywalker, and then they took it away.
Yes.
And yeah, it's and as much as I sob and I love I enjoy watching The Rise of Skywalker for the chaos that happens between the two of them. Like, that is a major pull for me between those two, because I'm like, God, I love watching them interact. I love watching this part of the movie. And I think
it's insane.
Yeah, I think they did so well with it. Great. I even think that like those parts were written pretty well, but they just shoved so much into that movie. And I always wonder like how it could have turned out, or what it would have looked like if they had more time. Obviously a trilogy isn't long, but it's also pretty long. And I want to know like what 3, if you had to pick a top 3 things that you would change from either the sequel trilogy as a whole or The Rise of Skywalker itself. Like, what are your things?
Okay, number 1, Ben Solo does not die. Like, we get the Lord of the Rings ending. There's 10 endings, and we get to see, I don't know, Rose is now an ambassador, and, you know, Finn has led a revolution. He's deprogramming stormtroopers. You know, we get the full Lord of the Rings, multiple endings. My ending is Rey and Ben on a planet, the Jedi Academy. They're running together, and they got babies crawling on them. You know, that's what I wanted. So that's the top thing. Ben Solo is not dead. That's my top thing. Number 2 is Palpatine does not come into this equation. at all in
Yeah.
the sequels. My goodness, that was so terrible.
Mhm.
You know, and having
So
these
weird.
and people are like, Ben Solo's dead. I'm like, well, if somehow Palpatine can return after being blown up twice, Ben Solo can be alive. Darth Maul was cut in half, running around. Boba Fett got eaten. Ben Solo can be alive. He can be in the world with the worlds. That can happen.
Exactly.
You know? So what's the third thing I would change? The third thing I would change, I think, gosh, I want to put Finn and Rose together because they have a story on Last Jedi. I would change everything for every other character in the Rise of Skywalker. Finn needs to lead a Stormtrooper rebellion. Like, why couldn't that have happened? Why couldn't his name become famous among them as someone who's
That would have been amazing.
Imagine him talking to them and like there's a big thing and they all turn and point their weapons at the officers. Like, oh, like I would have loved that.
Yeah.
And Rose,
Like an Independence Day level speech.
yes, it would be incredible. And then Rose was so sidelined, and it makes me angry because Kelly Tran is amazing and Rose is
Incredible.
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, take Claude out, you know, and let Rose be on the mission with them.
Yeah,
At
well,
least she's there. You know, she's not getting a storyline. At least let her be in the story.
Mm-hmm.
I would never. The Poe being a spice runner felt like such a slap in the face. To
That
Oscar.
made me so mad. I
like, what
was
a
so upset.
Cool thing to do to someone who said, "Please don't ever stereotype me," you know, as a Latino man. Like, don't ever do this stuff. And they did. I remember watching that, going, "He asked you not to do this, and you did it anyways."
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I feel like there was so much potential going into that third movie that it was very hard for me the path they chose. And when I talked to Rian Johnson, I said, I'd have turned Ben Solo in the first act. You know, if he would have it be Leia's death, which, okay, you know, told me only 3, but Leia should not have died.
That's fine.
You know, and I know Carrie Fisher passed away and that happened, but I thought use body doubles. I'm fine with that, you know.
Same.
But because this was supposed to have been her movie, that was the understanding, was Han got, 7, Luke got 8, Leia gets 9. And so we keep talking about poetry. The poetry in that, if Anakin, the great sin is Anakin being taken from his mother, the poetry is Ben Solo returning to his. And I said, if we can't have that, I would have taken Chewbacca. I would have taken him coming out of the rebel base, the crowd parting, Chewbacca standing there, and Ben being afraid, thinking he knows how furious Chewie is, and Chewie walking over to him and enfolding him in a giant hug. Like, what would that have meant to you as a fan?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it would have been incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I know Danny would love
yeah,
that.
it just as a stand-in for Han and Leia, Chewie's it. You know, like I would take that, and I said Chewie and Lando would 100% have forgiven Ben Solo. Like, it wouldn't even been
they would have been the reason that everybody would have figured out, like, oh, we should accept him because these two, of all the people that have lived through all of the things, like, they accept him. Of course we do. Like, oh wow.
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen him, like I said, turn early in the movie. Maybe it's because Hux stages a rebellion, that Hux overthrows him. He had those stupid lizards from Thrawn that held the Force. He could have used those, you know. Like, let's just. What are those, the Salamari? Like, I don't know what they're called.
So. I don't remember.
I think so, yeah.
You know, there was a way that you could have done that. We have these stuff that you could have used. And then he's forced to turn. He's forced to be it, but, like, kind of still fighting it. I want to see that guy talking to Poe. I want to see that guy talking to Finn. I want that interaction. I want that, you know, and Rey trying to get through to him. I want to see all that.
Yeah. You
know, and him helping him because he's mad at Hux. Like, I'm willing to see that, you know, and then him remembering and turning and talking to Lando. And I think they took so much stuff out that really, if you're going to kill him, give us the greeting. Like, I saw someone went and did Return of the Jedi, and they took everything that Luke did for Vader, like carrying him off, taking him back, having the funeral pyre. They took all of it out. And they said, now here's how the movie would have looked without Luke grieving. And it was so flat. And it was just so, like, it didn't mean anything.
Yeah. And
I thought, and that's what they did with Rise of Skywalker. Rey does not mourn Ben.
Yeah.
We do not see her holding his sweater or, you know, anything that would indicate that she's devastated by this loss. Her soulmate that she was in love with, there should have been some tears, you know, and she didn't grieve him. And I'm like, well, okay, he's going to be a Force ghost. And I'm sitting there thinking, she's going to say, be with me. And he's going to say, always. He's going to be there as a Force ghost. He's going to always be with her. And so I'm waiting for that to happen. And that didn't happen. You know, and I'm like, so I thought, well, you don't have her grieve because he's still out there, right? Like, I thought that was going to be the explanation, but it wasn't. And I thought, why are you not, why didn't she grieve? And like her saying, that's one of the things I tweeted about was I asked Daisy, and like, when I watched those final scenes of you guys together, it looks like your mouths are moving. Like you're focusing on Ben's face. It looks like Rey's mouth is moving. I said, was there dialogue that got cut, you know? And she said, no, the only dialogue that was scripted was when she says Ben, when she comes back to life. And then when he falls, she was supposed to have said, no, 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 no. And I thought they took it out. I thought, why did they take it out? for whatever reason, they don't want Rey to grieve him. And I thought that would have been so painful to watch her be so upset that he's dying. You know, like her, no, I can't have this, you know, fighting against it. You know, the scene where they captured Chewie, they were supposed to have had Kylo Ren, you know, invade his mind and torture him. And that Chewie fought it off by sending him images of them together when Ben was little. Of Chewie carrying him, of Chewie taking him out to a field to play, of Chewie feeding him. And so, like, it's so painful for Kylo Ren. Like, he can't deal with all the love. But Chewie is just sending him love. Like, I have nothing but love here for you. I have nothing but good things for you. And he has to leave because it's too much. And I thought, why did that get cut?
Yeah.
Because then you can't have the audience being like, well, Chewie loves him. Why would you kill this guy that Chewie loves? You know. So they took all these things. I thought you should have left this in there. Let us grieve him. Let everybody grieve him. If you want him to be dead so bad, let the characters grieve. And they didn't do that. So it's very tonally off for me to have that be the way that it was.
Yeah. I feel like one of my like greater, not reasons isn't the word I'm looking for, but like greater pulls to watching that movie, because it's Last Jedi is my favorite out of the sequel trilogy, but I watch Rise of Skywalker more often, and I think that's just because I'm so emotionally attached to the loss of characters, and I think that is very strange for me, but it's also a very, like, weirdly fulfilling thing to know that, like, maybe it's a sad thing that my body is just like, you need to keep watching this because you don't believe it's real, because when I was in the theater, I sobbed so hard throughout basically the last half of the movie. And I looked at my mom and I was like, I don't know why I can't stop crying. I'm like, I know a lot of sad things are happening, or a lot of things that are even exciting are happening, and my body is just not letting me calm down. And I was like, oh, it's because it's the last movie. Like, this is closing out something. I'm gonna cry right now. The listeners know that I cry a lot, so I'm sorry, Sariah, but, like, our listeners do know that I'm a crier. But I just, like, watching it and coming to terms with the fact that, like, this is the last thing. Like, yeah, we're gonna get lots and lots more Star Wars content, and I'm gonna love it and hold it near and dear to my heart, but I'm gonna have to live forever with the fact that they didn't put Ben Solo's Force Ghost next to Leia and Luke at the end. Like, even if everything else had been the same, there were a lot of problems and a lot of things that I've either come to terms with or I choose to ignore when I watch it. But that, for me, is probably one of the most disappointing factors, is that he didn't show up next to them, because it could have been they show up, and then he also fades in. Perfect, makes everybody cry, makes her smile and probably cry a little bit, and then she says Skywalker, end of movie, roll credits. And I know that, like, coming up, because something that I avoid doing pretty often is, like, coming up with my fan things in my head. So, like, then I get more sad. And I try to avoid those, but it is just so powerful, all of the things that did and did not happen, and it is really incredible to me. Grace, did you have something?
I have a lot of feelings about Rise of Skywalker also, and because, like, when we discussed this way back, like, when the movie came out, when we did just our general review, the first time I watched it, I was with all of my Rebel Legion and 501st friends, because we had done a troop before the movie. So all of us were sitting in one theater, all watching it together, and we're all, like, one big family. It's like our specific group. Like, we all kind of see each other that way. And having all of them there watching the last one of the saga was, like, huge. So I was also just very emotional the entire time. I was like, I couldn't feel anything. I was like, I have so much going on right now. I can't process it. And so the second time I watched it, I just went with my sister. She didn't go with me the first time. She went with me the second time. And the second time when I watched it, I just watched her watch it, basically. And she had the same sort of feelings toward Reylo that you guys have. Like, she knew immediately from episode 7 that, like, they would have been a thing, whereas I didn't really pick up on it until The Last Jedi, because I'm not great at picking up, like, unless they make it extremely obvious, sometimes it's, like, not something I pick up on right away. Not even just with Star Wars, but in general. But when that kiss scene happens and then he dies, I wasn't watching the screen. I was just watching her reaction. She was just like, what? Like, how could they have done that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were supposed to be together.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's just, I still am like, I'm not mad about it necessarily. I'm just like, I wish, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy how heart-wrenching something like that can be. It's all fake. It's fake, right. And it's in space, and it means so much to all of us.
Yes.
Okay, so Sariah, I won't hold you much longer. I have one last question for you, and it's, do you have any advice or anything for any writers out there? Or like, what's next for you? If it's a book, if it's not a book?
Yeah, it's always another book. I've got one I worked on now. It's coming out this December. It's called The Paid Bridesmaid. It's about a girl who is paid to be a professional bridesmaid.
That's fun.
And having a hero being the best man who's got a company that's about to go public, and he's worried about corporate espionage. So here's this woman with no social media who he's never heard of before. He's a little suspicious. So
I love that.
That was really fun to write. So I'm excited for that. But my advice for writers, I think the most important thing you can do is consume the content that you want to write. So if it's like, if you want to be a novelist, read. If you want to be a TV writer, read scripts and watch the shows. Like, consume that content and see how are the acts structured, how is story done, how, you know, these things are all really important. And if you get the chance, like, join a professional group, you know, whatever field you want to get into. Like, I'm Romance Writers of America. It's an organization I've been a part of for a long time. And it's just so helpful to have people who, at every level of your career, there's someone there or above you who can help you and tell you and kind of guide you in the right direction. And I think finding other people who are at the same point that you're at, like you're just starting out, finding other people who are just starting out and finding, you know, exchanging critiques and kind of seeing what works and what doesn't. Because it's hard to know if you're any, I don't want to say good, but people, the thing that I've learned, especially this kind of indie publishing revolution, is, you know, stuff that I think is total garbage, you know, has gotten, you know, hundreds of thousands of sales. It appeals to other people, you know, that just because I don't like something doesn't mean someone else it's not going to be their favorite book, you know. And I think we get so caught up in what's good, but I had to go out some time and look at like Pride and Prejudice's reviews on Amazon. Like, there's so many 1-star reviews about how terrible this book is. You know, you're never going to write something that appeals to everyone. And I think when you find your voice, you're going to have people who really love you and people who hate you a lot. And that's actually really good. You don't want to be in this lukewarm space where it's like, yeah, this was okay, you know, it's fine. You didn't do your job then for that reader, you know, like they didn't connect with you. You're looking for those people who connect with what you are into, what you like, what you want to share with the world. And you will find those people. And that's, like I said, that's so great about being able to publish books yourself too, is that you have that chance. You have that chance to find that group of people who are waiting for what you write, you know, and especially with so much streaming services and everything today too, that when it comes to providing content for writing shows or movies, there's so many outlets, you know, you now have that chance you didn't have before, which I think is fantastic. So kind of this democratization of you know, consuming art, that we get to look for what we like. And so, yeah, that's my advice.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Your book is really well balanced between romance and Star Wars references, friendship, and even like mental roadblocks. And humor, and I laugh almost every time I turn a page. It's a really, really good read. For those of you listening, Seat Filler comes out April 27th, so very soon in relation to when this episode is going to come out. Thank you, Sariah, so much for being here with Castle Run Weekly. Thank you, Grace, for co-hosting with me and being a part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining Castle Run Weekly. Don't forget to follow us at Castle Run Weekly on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Join in on our streams at twitch.tv/@WookieDan. I think that's Wookie with 2 E's. Grace, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
I am the head moderator and administrator over at Castle Run Weekly's Discord server, as well as twitch.tv/WookieDan. And you can find me at Amidala_716 on Twitter.
Wonderful. Sariah, do you have social media you'd like to drop for people?
You can find me on Twitter at Sariah Wilson, and you might get some fun Daisy, Ridley, and Rian Johnson content if you want to follow me there. And on Instagram, I'm at Sariah Wilson 411.
Awesome. Well, like I said, thank you both. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.